Welcome to the Inclusion Think Tank podcast presented by New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education, NJCIE. As the name suggests, this podcast will discuss inclusive education and, most importantly, why it works. On this episode, I welcome my guest, Vera Piasecki. Vera and I discuss the academic and social benefits of inclusive education. All right, so I would like to welcome everyone back to another episode of the Inclusion Think Tank podcast presented by New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education. I'm your host, Arthur Aston, and on today's episode, I welcome my guest, Vera Piasecki. And Vera, I am happy to have you join me today, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Thanks for having me, Art.
Yeah, we've been communicating by email for the last few weeks about setting this up, and it's been really great talking with you behind the scenes, and I'm excited to share this conversation in this episode with everyone today. So to start off, can you explain to me and our listeners, for you as a parent, how would you define inclusive education?
I guess, Art, it's always been kind of simple for me. When I think of inclusion, I just think of the real world. And there is no place in the world or in my community that my daughter with a disability is excluded. We sit at the same tables at restaurants. We sit in the same pew in church. And the only place that I found that it was segregated seemed to be our schools, and just logically that didn't make sense to me. So for me, I view inclusion, which I think every parent of a typical child takes for granted. I view inclusion as my daughter being able to go to school and experience the same things, be in the same classrooms as my older children did, who are neurotypical. So I had a very simplistic view of what inclusion was to begin with. But as she got into school, it became more distinct, where you start looking at inclusion in a classroom. Inclusion is not putting a child with a disability in a classroom and then pulling them to a back table and working with them on their own. So they're much more, as you get into the academics of it, inclusion means so much, but on a broad scale. For me, inclusion was having my daughter have the opportunity to go to school with her neighbors and community members, getting in a carpool, simple things that parents of neurotypical kids take for granted. I remember once when she was in elementary school and we were struggling with the district and to keep her included. They wanted to remove her from the school. And I talked to a friend of mine whose children are the same age as mine. And I was talking about the worry, hoping, that she didn't get written up for something, or that they were documenting, some of her, any concerns or issues. And she said to me, she goes, "Oh my God, I had no idea how much you worry, day in, day out, things that I just take for granted." And I think that's where I wanted to ultimately get to. So that was my thoughts on what inclusion was for me.
Yeah, and can you tell us a little bit more about your daughter? I read up and saw some things, and you sent me some videos and things, and I'm really excited. But can you share with us about your daughter Hannah and what her disabilities are, and some of the things that she has to live with?
Yeah, Hannah is a 14-year-old teenager, and I say teenager because everybody knows what that means, with Down syndrome. She has intellectual disability. She has physical, muscle tone, physical delays, and she also has speech communication challenges. She she speaks very little in public because she knows she sounds different. So she's very conscious of those sorts of things. But Hannah has been included when she started preschool. I sent her to the same preschool that my older kids went to. Um, and and from there, she entered the district inclusive preschool program at 3 years old, much to their chagrin, because a child with Down syndrome should be in a self-contained classroom. And she has been included with her classmates since kindergarten. So although she's different, a lot of them don't think anything of it because she's just Hannah. They've known her for so long. So it's been kind of a wonderful, I know I can kind of get off on a tangent, but I think when you include somebody and they're with the same group of kids and neighbors, there's a social aspect to it. You know, with schools, we take inclusion, we all think academics, 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 but the social side, I think is almost or even more important. And to see some of the cards and gifts, she had a little party for her 14th birthday. And those kids just get her, from knowing her favorite color to knowing what she likes to do, to just some of the cards, I mean, that they wrote to her. I was just in tears reading how kind these kids were and how well they got her. That is basically Hannah.
Yeah,
So
and it's great because I love what you said of, how her group of friends have been with her since kindergarten. Now she's 14, and like you said, they get her. And that
mhm.
is so important. And I can remember, growing up and as very similar, being in along with the same group of kids in the neighborhood from kindergarten through 6th grade, and then through middle school and high school. Like, there were more students added to the school population because the
Mhm.
schools were bigger, but we still had, that same group of people who
Core
were,
group.
yeah, who were
Yeah.
still connected to each other. And I always, uh, I always say, like, I don't have children myself, but my friends who have kids and the way that my friends um, let me into their lives, and I go and stay at their houses so their children see me. And I have a disability. I walk with crutches and use a wheelchair. And so it's like, so I love to think that, once, because they know me, when they go to school and they see someone who is different, someone who has a wheelchair or crutches, they can say, oh, my mom's friend has that, it's no big deal.
Right,
So that
right,
is it's
right.
so great how kids get it.
Yeah, it really is. The kids are never the problem.
Yeah.
Um, and just a quick story. In March, she got Student of the Month at her middle school, and the guidance. She doesn't like a lot of attention. She sometimes, if there's clapping all of a sudden, sensory, loud noises may upset her. So they were concerned, with making announcements and wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable. So she got in her carpool in the morning, and one of the little girls in the carpool said, Hannah, I heard you're Student of the Month, and sort of thing. I said, yeah, it's great. I said, we're a little worried though that everybody's going to clap, when they make the announcement, and you know how much Hannah, and this girl, and she's not a little girl anymore, but this girl was in her first period class, and she said, I got it. And she went in that morning. And before the guidance counselors could even get in, she had taught everybody to do the sign language clap. So that
Oh,
when they made the announcement, everybody, and the guidance counselor had come in to do the same thing, but it had already been taken care of. And so those are the, I mean, those are the sorts of things. I mean, in elementary school, one day I went to pick her up. She wasn't at the front door. I must have gotten 5 phone calls from parents saying, saying, my kids are back with Hannah. They said she went out the back door. I'm like, oh, I misunderstood, So they kind of look out, or the little boy who told his mother that he thought a little girl might not be treating her nicely and to call me in elementary school. So there's this kindness, there's this kind of looking out for her that that I appreciate. So
Yeah.
yeah, in those friendships. So
That's such a great story about the other student teaching everyone the sign language. That is so
yes,
good.
yes, very, very early on. I have an older sister that is began her career teaching special education down in New Orleans, and moved up the ranks, and so she was a big supporter of mine when it came to including. Uh, Um, and she told me early on that Hannah would have a pit crew. She called it a pit crew, like at a car. So there would be one child that, would keep her straight. Then there'd be the nurturer. Then there'd be, and it is so true. Everybody has like different personalities, that kind of support what she needs. So she has her own little pit crew.
Right. Yes. What I mean we've touched on all of this already, which I think is so great. But why would you say inclusion is important?
I mean, I think in a nutshell, it's the research, is clear. I think if you talk to the experts at NJCIE, like Fred, he would say 50, 60 years of research is very, very clear that there are better outcomes when children are included. That means, when it comes to jobs, once they get out of school, I mean, there's just nothing, there's nothing out there that counteracts the research that says inclusion makes a difference. And that is what I held firm with. Every time somebody wanted her removed or pulled out, I just kept saying, show me the research or show me the data that says she'll do better in a self-contained or smaller environment. And there was nothing there. It was like, we hope, or,
Mhm.
so I think it's important. My job, our job as parents, is to make sure your kids do, live a happy, full life. I want her to have opportunities, and inclusion, based on all the research and data, said to me this was going to give her the best chance to have a full life. Following the data, even when, I might have had situations where they weren't supportive of inclusion. And I can remember a lot of days just saying, oh my God, what am I doing? When they didn't want to modify the curriculum and she was struggling, and, suddenly, because I don't want to downplay how hard this can be.
Mhm.
Um, Hannah is not behavioral, but her way of extricating herself from a situation where she's nervous or whatever is suddenly she has a stomach ache or her throat hurts. So when you have a lot of those situations, something's going on, and and maybe the district wasn't being supportive and modifying and helping her in that situation. And you'd sit there and say, oh my God, what am I doing? I just had to hold firm to the belief that she was better off in that inclusive setting. And I think, based on what we have gone through, that has proved to be right. So
Yeah.
so right now we're in a very good place.
Good.
So
What positive impact have you seen the inclusive education setting have on Hannah?
I think um, I think clearly, academically, um, she, like most kids, they mimic kids around them. They learn from the kids around them. And I remember in kindergarten, they sent a note home saying Hannah would not leave for the fire drill, because she apparently, all the kids had left their reading book open and Hannah had closed hers, but she wanted to open it to the page where everybody else was. She noticed.
Um,
So she wouldn't leave. So they took that as like a negative, and I was like, oh, good for her. She's modeling what all the other kids are doing. Um, and then as she got older, she pretty much held on academically, without, she had a lot of accommodations. She had a paraprofessional, and she, you know, maybe for homework they would do only odd numbers versus odds and evens, those sorts of things, less numbers. when she got to second grade, we started kind of, I knew the gap would widen academically. But when we were in second grade, there were no goals or objectives in her IEP that talked about regrouping numbers. And there was Hannah, because she was exposed to it in the classroom, singing a song a teacher taught her about how to regroup. We got to third grade. There were no goals or objectives about multiplication. Because she was exposed to it in the classroom, she was multiplying. So those were the points in time where academically, I was like, this is working. This is working. Now, was she a grade level? Absolutely not. And I think for teachers, that was very hard to see. Teachers in a gen ed setting, particularly in New Jersey, I think, because inclusion is not, widely embraced. So I think it was very hard for them to see. And I remember a teacher saying, but she's not at grade level. And if you remove her into the self-contained setting, they can focus more. And I remember saying to her, moving her to a small room will not make her get to grade level. She will probably never be at grade level, in some cases. And they say, she would go out one-on-one and they'd say, oh, she needs so much prompting in the general ed setting. And I'd say, how much prompting did she need one-on-one? It was the same numbers. So it didn't matter where she was. And I kept saying to them, she will never be a grade level. I don't expect her to be a grade level. I think the teachers thought I was some lunatic who thought my daughter was incredibly bright and, and could do, she's a hard worker and I think she's amazing. But I'm realistic in what she can do. So that was, I think on academics. And then last year we had a session with the 7th grade math teachers, and they announced she was doing 7th grade math. It's just amazing. And part of it is that now that inclusion is being embraced in our districts, these teachers are so talented at taking her splinter skills, the things that she's strong about. My daughter is a rule follower, almost to a detriment. She can drive you crazy. You follow the rules. So her older brother tortures her quite a bit, you can imagine. But you give her steps to follow, and she's a rock star. So math, you have the steps listed, and she can do the work that's given her. So it's so finding those splinter skills and really taking advantage of it. So academically, I can tell you, Art, when she was in preschool, I can remember saying to my sister, oh, what do we do that, she gets to kindergarten, they start talking about telling time and she can't tell time. And my sister says, so she uses a digital clock, who cares? Guess what? She learned to tell time, and then, I'd be like, oh, what do I do? In 3rd, 4th grade, they're multiplying and she still can't, worrying 4 years down the road, what was going to happen. And she got there and she was doing it, again, some things she may not be good with fractions. So maybe they don't have her do fractions with different denominators and things like that. But there are just these splinter skills and these things that she can do that the teachers have been able to identify. I mean, middle school has been a phenomenal experience for her. So that's on the academic side. I mean, socially, because I never want to forget social. I've found that that the community and the kids have been spectacular. I mean, when the community heard that Hannah, that the district wanted to remove Hannah from her home school in 4th grade, after she'd been with them since kindergarten, they really came out and they rallied. And these parents, without any formal training on inclusion, they just got it. When the teacher announcements would come out in elementary school, I would have parents call me hoping that their child was in the same class as Hannah, because not only was Hannah not behavioral, or not that she wasn't an issue in the classroom, but she came with extra support, right? Whether it was an in-class resource and a paraprofessional. So those parents understood that there was a benefit to getting in class with Hannah. Or the parents that would walk up to me who had the high energy boys, who would say to me, "Oh, the teacher puts my son next to your daughter all the time because she's a calming influence on him." Those sorts of things. Or the new students that came in part year during the school, that the teacher always put them next to Hannah. And to this day, she still has very close friendships to kids that came in like second grade or new, because the teachers would sit them right next to Hannah all the time. So I think on the social side and for the neurotypical kids, I think the neurotypical kids have been taught a lot of messages as well. I mean, kindness, learning how to communicate differently. In sixth grade math, they asked if the teachers asked if who wanted to work with Hannah on some math problems, and they said that it was just overwhelming. Like the kids rushed the table to work with her, to the point that Hannah actually started to cry a little bit because it was too much.
Oh.
So they actually had to kind of put up like a little waiting list, to control who would work with her. So I think there's a lot of benefit to kids being exposed, like your own story you were talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone into situations where I've walked with her into a private school that would not accept a child like Hannah, and watch some of the kids kind of stare. I call it the alien stare, where they're like, like they don't understand. And that's bothersome, because I mean, this world, everybody's different. Everybody is, has their own unique challenges, and I think we're a better place if we're all together. So I just want to make academic and social. I mean, I think there's just so many benefits that we've garnered from inclusion.
Yes, and I think those are both important to mention, like the academic and the social, because that is, when we first started our conversation, you said, like, you sit at the same tables in restaurants and you sit in the same pews at church. It's, it is our world outside of school. And as we grow older and become adults, we're expected to all just be together in the same places. And then, as you just mentioned, with the stares that people give sometimes, and it's so I think as it's important that we start the inclusion process in schools, like you said, from kindergarten and
Yeah.
elementary school, just so it's nothing, so that it becomes common and becomes something regular that the kids see. So it's not a something to stare at later on as they get older in life, because they've never seen someone with Down syndrome or someone that uses a wheelchair, or whether it's a guide dog or something or anything, whatever their disability might be.
Yeah, and I think people also need to be very clear that the research just doesn't say that only children like my daughter benefit. The
Mhm.
research is also clear that the neurotypical kids benefit. So any adjustment to maybe some of the way things are being explained or the work is being accommodated can also benefit the neurotypical kids in the class, forgetting all the other, soft benefits of empathy and, and just kindness. But in the classroom, so the research is clear also that neurotypical kids benefit from inclusion as well. So because in the old days you kind of used to hear, oh, it takes the attention away, and I'm not saying you take a child with severe intellectual disabilities and just throw them in a classroom. I mean, they have to be supported appropriately like any child. but again, I just keep going back to it. The research is clear, and for all the tough or nervous times I had when I was saying, what the heck am I doing here? Because she's my baby. She's my third. She's my baby. I sent her off to school before, she needed somebody to help her lift her leg up to get on a sidewalk at 3 years old. I'm putting her on a bus to go to a district, preschool. So, it does get very difficult, but I, just from maybe helicopter mom, maybe I try not to be, but hard to kind of let them go. But there were very difficult times, but in the long run, I'm glad we kind of saw it through, and I'm blessed to be in a wonderful and supportive community that is embracing it all.
Yes.
Including our school district. They've made it one of their top strategic initiatives. So I'm happy we've all gotten to that point.
Yes, and not definitely not a helicopter mom. I think you're just a mom who you're a
Yeah.
mom who wants the best for their child. And it's as you said, it just doesn't benefit her. It benefits every child. And I think that is one of the most important things that you can ever stress, that it's not just it doesn't just benefit the one child or the child with the challenges, the disabilities. It benefits the whole class. And it, like you said, it goes beyond the being kind and the empathy and all of those things that are wonderful to teach children at such young ages. But I can remember being in school and having trouble with math, and just the way the teacher explained it might not have been getting to me and helping me understand it better, but just having someone else explain it to me in a different way, was beneficial to me. So it's
peer models.
yes, yes,
You just can't do any better than that.
absolutely.
Yeah, spectacular.
Yeah, so it's really I laughed because I thought about my own mom, and you saying helicopter mom, and I'm like, no, you're just a mom, because like my mom did the same thing. And I know so many other moms that do the same thing, and they just, like I said, you all just want the best for your children. And I think that's every parent, mom or dad, or any relative. You just want the best for your kids. And as you said, every person is different in some way. We all have some type of different, we're different than the person next to us. And when we understand those differences, I think is when we do become better, as a whole society and a community.
And it's what makes life interesting, right? Knowing everybody. But yeah, and it's interesting, like I'd say, like our community, when people started becoming aware that, I was fighting to keep her in district when she was in elementary school. It was just amazing. I had parents that would come up to me of classmates, and they would say, how can they do this? She makes my son a better person. I get choked up. Or the parent whose child was in self-contained in high school that didn't have the opportunities my daughter had to be included, who knew I was struggling and sent a picture of a beautiful drawing of a snowman, and just said, don't stop fighting. This is what my daughter did all day in high school. Just drawing a snowman. So those times when people don't even realize how they're helping you kind of, keep the course.
Right.
So that was very important on my journey. Once people became aware, because again, Hannah she was unique. She was probably the only child with her significant disabilities being fully included back, in elementary school in our district. And now I have to say, with board members that have come on, and a new head of special education, NJCIE has been in training teachers. It has, it's like the clouds have parted and things are coming together, much better. I mean, I can't complain. She is my only child that likes school. My others always grumbled every day. She gets up, I drop her off, and she walks in with her ponytail swinging because she's happy as a clam. So I can't, what more can you ask? She's happy to go to school every day. It's a wonderful thing. So
yeah. Wow. Well, Vera, this has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed
I hope
it.
so. I was a little nervous.
Oh no. No, this was really great. And hearing your story and learning about Hannah, I think is going to be very very special for our listeners to hear. And again, I love stressing the academic benefits, but then also the social benefits of inclusion, because that is such a key piece to living life, and being in the community, and just embracing everyone's differences. And like you said, it makes it more interesting, and it makes life fun. We can acknowledge and embrace the differences of everybody. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Art. You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Inclusion Think Tank podcast. This podcast is brought to you by New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube or Spotify, and don't forget to follow us on social media at NJCIE. Until next time.